Hello everyone, and welcome back to the review. In this part, I'm going to analyse the game that we all ended up with after many patches and the DLCs. Now, to make it clear, this is the base game as it stands today. I will be talking about Challenge Mode, Sandbox, and the DLCs in their own video. This is just going to discuss the base vanilla game. That also means no mods. Don't forget to like, comment, and if you're new, subscribe for more videos from Triple Gaming. Now then, let's dig back in. So, let's consider the base vanilla game as it stands now. Were some of the problems that I had fixed? Well, they were. I know, right? Shock horror, a games company actually improving their game after release. I think it's important for me to start this video with the positivity that surrounds many of the changes that were made. I need to make it clear that Frontier did improve JWE considerably, considering how the game started, and the game as it stands now is a vast improvement. I can't ignore that, and we shouldn't on the whole because many companies, looking at UEA, rarely take their game's negative criticisms on board and make the game better. I want to spend some time here detailing the improvements that were made because it's vital to not overlook them. The terrain system was improved soon after release. The terrain tools were improved, and the terrain constraint systems were also improved. Now we will look back at this later, but from day one it became slightly easier to build parks and slightly easier to use the terrain. We also eventually got a system that showed you what was in the way of your building if there was something stopping it, and you could adjust and move the park as a result. The dinosaurs were also improved. We did get some better basic behaviours like sleeping, we got a limited form of pack behaviour, and we did get better lifespans. We also got new dinosaurs thanks to the DLCs, which we'll come back to in a later video, and again thanks to those DLCs we also got better looking skins, looking at you Velociraptor, and we got more island space, again more on this later. Some dinosaurs even came with unique animations, such as the Nasutoceratops's cool combat finishing move. Good positive points, and a move by Frontier for sure to improve the game. And it is also worth pointing out that there were some aspects that were and are still generally great about JWE. The dinosaur list is one of them. Fully DLC'd up, Jurassic World Evolution features a great wealth of different species, from old favourites to new and more recent discoveries. Huangosaurus became one of my favourites almost instantly, as did Struthiomimus, Nasutoceratops, and the Metriacanthosaurus. And a great many of these dinosaurs are modelled wonderfully with really nice looking skins. Again, however, we'll get back to that later. The game is also visually very nice. Graphically it is pretty, at least on PC, but for me this does little but earn the game a quarter of a star, and this point segues into my philosophy when it comes to modern gaming as a whole. It is 2021. Games consoles and PCs are these days many more times powerful than some of the computer hardware used to land men on the moon. The fact a game is visually appealing these days is nothing worth shouting about. Games, especially those that cost 60 quid on launch, ought to look good, it's expected. But JWE did look pretty, so they do at least get some points for that. Other positives? Well, it's a very stable game. When one gets used to Bethesda games crashing or having bugs every time you start it up, the fact that a game doesn't crash or have a game-breaking bug over hundreds of hours of gaming is a very refreshing example of what polished should mean in a video game sphere. I have over 700 hours in JWE. In that time, I think I've suffered no more than half a dozen crash to desktops, usually due to a mod mess-up, which is my fault anyway. This is pretty good. Even with the game as modded as mine is, the game runs very stably, and this shows that Frontier does at least know what it's doing in the game engine department. Bethesda, go take some notes before you try patching Fallout 76 again, eh? These are all good things, but then we have to think about what sorts of criticisms can still be directed at the game as it stands now, and unfortunately, this is the section that's going to end up taking its time. JWE today for me stands as a game that can be given the title should have been better. To help organise my criticisms about the game, I'm going to look at the certain sections of the game step by step. Let's start with what should be one of the most important parts of a dinosaur park building game, the dinosaurs themselves. Now, to aid me in evaluating the dinosaurs of JWE, I'm going to compare them to the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park Operation Genesis. In design, many of the dinosaurs in JWE easily outdo the limited graphics and models of JPOG, no question. We also have more than 3 times the number of dinosaurs to choose from. However, this does seem to have come at a price. There are many dinosaurs whose skins in the base game are amazing. The Struthi, the Huango and the Gigantospino all come to mind here. However, there are some dinosaurs whose skins really do make me wonder what went wrong. The base game Velociraptor skins, for example, are simply appalling, still, even after all this time. Dull and simplistic with little variance or interesting designs. And the poor raptor is not alone. In total, just in the base game alone without DLCs, there are 23 species that I either never used or rarely used due to the dullness of their skins. Ceratopsians and Ankylosaurids were the most criminally affected, with their skins being almost all bland and uninteresting. There are also many big name dinosaurs whose base game skins are for me very limited, including the Indo-Rex, where you have either white, white and black, or black, T-Rex, where you have even brown, white, brown, browner or beige, and the Diplodocus, where you have brown, beige or grey. And when you look at some skins, like those of the Huangosaurus, Spinosaurus or the Mamenchisaurus, it is disheartening to see how many species were given so little interest. Now for some of you, I'm sure you prefer the more realistic skins, whatever that means for creatures none of us have seen. But then the question really comes down to why bother giving us skin variations, when all they do is make an already brown dinosaur even browner or more beige. And for some dinosaurs, looking at you Brachy, Rexy and Veloci, they were only saved by a paid-for DLC that actually gave them worthwhile skins. This odd dichotomy of design is also featured in how some dinosaurs are modelled. This is most clear for me with the Uranosaurus. This DLC dinosaur has for a long time been featured with a sail on its back, similar to dinosaurs like Spinosaurus. More recent theories suggest that perhaps it was a fatty hump instead. The Urano in-game has a hump for realism's sake, and it looks stupid. I'm sorry, but it does. Why could we not have the sailback version instead? It would have been unique as the only herbivore with a sail on its back, and we could have had some truly vibrant sail patterns like that of the Spinosaurus. Instead, we just got another hadrosaur with a hump, and it's not like the game is trying to present its dinosaurs realistically, is it? We don't have feathered dinosaurs. The Spinosaurus doesn't look like any of its modern-day more accurate reconstructions. The Velociraptor is still too big. The Huangosaurus is oversized. The same could be said of the Euoplocephalus that looks like a balloon with some rocks stuck to it. Realistic maybe, but then why not give us something that looks more interesting? This argument of it's a more realistic depiction is used as a defense by some when looking at certain dinosaurs in the game, and yet other completely unrealistic species are ignored. You can't have both cakes and eat them. Either you want realism or you don't. If Jurassic Park, and to an even greater respect Jurassic World, is not about realistic dinosaurs, then make them more interesting, have vibrant depictions. Now, what about dinosaur behaviour? Well, consider the behaviour of the dinosaurs in JPOG. Dinosaurs in JPOG would socialise by playing with one another, moving around the paddock together. They would graze on plants in their paddock, which counted towards their food needs. They would herd together, and they would have alphas. They would also fight to create new alphas, and the Ceratopsians and Pachycephalosaurs would rut with one another to get new alphas. Raptors and carnivores would test fences, and raptors would even climb up fences to either jump out and escape, or be electrically shocked back down to the ground. Carnivores would also chase their prey down naturally until it died, and would in some cases gang up on a single target. Small dinosaurs would also not scare guests, or harm them. Oh, and they can sleep, and that feature didn't need patching in Frontier. Now, what do your dinosaurs do in JWE? Well, they do sleep, now that it was patched in of course. Dinosaurs do socialise, but they do it in a really unnatural looking way, standing around in triangles or squares. It looks more like a business meeting than animals socialising. Perhaps Frontier needs to go and watch some more David Attenborough. I really don't consider it socialising. Ceratopsians and Pachycephalosaurs do not rut, or at least, I've never seen it. In the dinosaur fact file for Pachycephalosaurus we do see them rut, but I've never seen it in-game ever. In nearly 700 hours of gameplay, if they do rut, how does it happen? Answers in the comments, folks. The limited animations also makes dinosaur hunting and fighting laughable. Instead of chasing prey down naturally, carnivores and their prey have to arrange themselves in preset positions in order to allow the animation to play. Then their prey takes on the role of some sort of gentleman declaring, "Oh, I'm totally outclassed, please now kill me." It's just not very natural and it looks stupid, especially as both animals kind of circle each other like wrestlers, and it doesn't look any more realistic than wrestling either. It's even funnier when dinosaurs escape and go to kill guests. Every single time it's the same. Dinosaur gets into position, person gets into position, person comically falls over and then gets eaten. It looks so fake. The fact the game doesn't even show blood makes it look even more fake. It's so tick box sanitized. Raptors don't climb fences. No, instead, Frontier believes that an animal weighing probably about 150 kilograms could headbutt and smash their way through a solid, probably rebar reinforced concrete wall that looks around half a meter thick. Other dinosaurs do this. Small creatures literally headbutting solid steel and concrete. Seriously? If a raptor did run and headbutt a wall like that, it'd probably end up dead, or at least concussed. It's just silly. If a game from a decade ago could have a raptor climb a fence, was there really no better way of doing this? Couldn't you make a climbing animation, or a digging animation, or a biting hold with jaws ripping animation? This just strikes me as laziness, or a lack of imagination. Herbivores graze, but it doesn't count towards their food requirements. This makes it impossible to make purely natural enclosures. One wonders why this was the case. If I was being cynical, and of course I am, I would suggest that sending your rangers to refill feeders is one of the most common aspects of what this game laughably calls gameplay. So let's segue into that. In a minute though, I'm not done yet. Oh, and before the JWE fanboys come at me with, "Yeah, but the game has like 3 times the number of dinosaurs," let me just torpedo your argument. What would you rather have? 3 scoops of chocolate, strawberry and mango ice cream? Or 10 scoops of the same barely tasting vanilla ice cream? More does not equal better. Now, we can't discuss gameplay in dinosaurs without looking at the genetic system, something that was hyped up on the run to release. Again, the idea makes sense. With all the new movies leaning heavily on hybrids, some sort of system like this was to be expected. You can modify your dinosaur's genetic code to alter the skins of the dinosaurs and to alter aspects of its behaviour. But again, like so much of the game, it has all the depth of a flippin' puzzle. The genetic changes you make to the dinosaurs are all very clear. It's very easy to avoid danger and problems. Why would you make, for example, carnivores easier to stress out? Ian Malcolm likes to comment on chaos theory, but there's no risk of that. You can muddle around with all the genetic system and it provides no risk to you. The worst that might happen is your egg may fail, but then given how much money you earn, again this is not exactly an issue. Oh well, throw it in the bin and start again seems to be the process. The choice of genes also looks a lot larger than it is. Many of the genes are merely advanced versions that have slightly better effect. However, apart from lifespan genes, most are worthless. Unless you want to spend all your time having dinosaurs fighting. In general gameplay, the only ones worth having in the base game are the lifespan genes. Right, good, on to gameplay. Like the dinosaurs, Jurassic World Evolution's gameplay is like a brick being balanced on a pavlova. But we need to consider what sort of game this even is. Frontier claimed it was not a park builder, but a management game. Right. Okay then, let's ignore that stupidity for a second, shall we? JWE is first and foremost a park building game, which means we can compare it to other games like Planet Coaster, Planet Zoo, and to a greater extent, JPOG. JWE's gameplay in campaign can be divided into 3 phases. Phase 1, where you examine your island, figure out what you need first, produce your first dinosaurs, and start getting contracts done. Phase 2, where you start completing the main mission, expand the park, and produce new species. Phase 3, where your park is mostly complete and you do anything you can to get that 5-star rating. Every campaign map goes in exactly the same way. An attempt is made with Tacanho to make it different, but apart from that, the division missions, there's little to make each island unique. The divisions themselves were a great idea, but again implemented in the most simplistic way they could. On the face of it, they're interesting. 3 different managers which you're suddenly now overseeing and working with. A science advisor who has connection to Dr. Wu, our now suddenly evil fellow. An entertainment guy who feels like a voice for John Hammond, who just sees the show. And a security guy who is... well, he feels like a Resident Evil villain, just not as good, or funny, or remotely characterized. The idea is that during gameplay, you have to balance out the missions you do for them and the tasks, and if you do it well, you get more stuff. The problem is, it's a very simple system and easy to cheat. It is also full of contradictions. Let's take a common example. The science division wants you to dig up a dinosaur fossil so you can find some more of that sweet, succulent dino DNA. Doing so will give you 3 positive arrows for the science rep. What makes no sense is that both the entertainment and the security division will lower their rep by 2 down arrows as a result. The 2 other divisions who also need dinosaurs don't like you going and getting more dinosaurs? Who wrote this? Probably the same guys that wrote that totally not secure gate system. The division gameplay is only there, as far as I can see, as another method of slowing down the simplistic gameplay and causing a grind. You have to get all 3 division stats up to max to unlock everything anyway, so it isn't even like focusing on one division over the others has any consequences or advantages. This again pokes a hole in the whole idea of this being about management, and actually just makes it a pointless side grind to get all the stuff to build your parks. You don't have to stick to just one division. You don't have to make any difficult choices here. All you do is grind the repetitive quests for one side before moving to the next. It's like a terrible fetch quest. Now, we do have other characters in the game, other than our division folks. Ian Malcolm is his usual self in this game, and is mostly there to deliver the usual sarcastic one-liners, but nothing else of substance. Cabot Finch is the main guy we hear from as we build our parks. He introduces new dinosaurs and pops in occasionally to talk. He is, however, pretty one-dimensional. As a character, he is only after the cash. Dr. Wu occasionally shows up to do his "I'm a bad guy, no really" impression, which still feels weird after seeing him in Jurassic Park as this happy, smiling dinosaur maker. What annoys is that in the memo section of the database, there seems to be some attempt to create a story, or some sort of background intrigue. I assume the division system is supposed to feed into that, but it's done so poorly. It makes the division system feel tacked on. Even more strange is how some characters seem to be completely opposite to what they would be. Claire Deering is apparently still somehow allowed to be involved even after the events of Jurassic World, and Owen is on the security side, even after the events of the same movie. These things make no sense if you think about it for more than 10 seconds. Beyond the division system itself, building the parks themselves is lackluster compared to how other games do it now and more than a decade ago. We have very little choice in how the parks look. We have little if any decoration. Even JPOG 10 years ago at least had some fountains and benches and rest areas and other things to put down. JWE doesn't even offer something as simple as a flower pot. Not a single decorative item at all. As a result, the parks end up looking very much identical. The same blocky buildings with very boring colour palettes. Everything in the Jurassic World era is either white, grey, or a combination. Yes, the visitor buildings have a few colours, but even then it's pointless because of how the game does its rating systems. Essentially, your park is judged on its food, drink, fun, and shopping requirements. Let's ignore the need for shopping on a bloody dinosaur island, shall we? We have a number of buildings that all do the same job, and yet all JWE players know that you only need 3 of them to completely ruin the simplistic rating system. You won't need any of the others at all, just 3. The restaurant, the arcade, and the clothes shop. That's it, you're done. Congrats, you just won the rating system. Hell, you don't even need to sell different things. Every single restaurant could sell the same giganto steak, and it wouldn't annoy anyone at all. Again, how is this management? Attractions for the dinosaurs are even more limited with 3 options. A viewing gallery for low vision but over a short and wide area of viewing. The equivalent to the JPOG viewing vent, only about 3 times larger than it needs to be. and we will be getting back to scale and size shortly. The viewing tower, which offers a longer distance of viewing but a more narrow field of view, only in one direction, regardless of the fact that the top is almost a completely fully glassed tower with 360-degree views. The third is what I'm calling in-enclosure vehicles, whether it's a gyrosphere or a tour truck. And that's it. They don't even work very well. The actual viewing area of these buildings is terrible and a lot shorter than realistically makes sense. All it does is make the viewing rating of your parks more annoying to gain. Once your enclosures are over a certain size, the viewing attractions become useless. Let's compare this to JPOG. In JPOG, you have the viewing vent to stick on the sides of your fences. It's narrow, so it fits easily into the park's more cramped areas. You have a larger viewing tower that offers 360-degree viewing so that it can be used as a central attraction amongst an area of exhibits. You have the viewing dome, which you can place inside an enclosure, and guests use a tunnel to get to it, allowing you to get guests viewing dinosaurs who may not be near the fences. You have the tour truck ride for singular enclosures, and then the hot air balloon for a ride over the whole island. Notice how not only do we have more options, but notice how these 5 complement each other in their use, from small scale to large scale. Once more, JPOG, a game from 10 years ago, offered you more choice in park building. The problem is that yet again in JWE your parks end up looking identical because you have so few options. Guests can't even view the dinosaurs through the fences. The issue with the limited options is that it affects the dinosaur viewing rating system. The limited viewing range of buildings mean that to make the best use of them, your enclosures have to be small. Enclosure design for your dinosaurs is equally unfulfilling, as you get very few options for designing them. They all end up looking very similar. Dinosaurs all have certain requirements to make them happy, which is good, but the requirements are so arbitrary and very easy to fudge. There is also no such thing as animal enrichment. All modern-day zoos have some form of animal enrichment. Planet Zoo and the Zoo Tycoon games also have this. But in JWE, you can't improve the lives of your dinosaurs in any way. No wonder they get bored and try to concuss themselves on a damn wall. Let's consider the buildings you need for basic park running. Until the last DLC, your rangers could not tranquilize the dinosaurs. Even though they have the same rifles, only the ACU center could tranquilize the dinosaur. So in a game where your space is limited, you have to build both of them, and naturally, they're oversized. They're flippin' huge. Then there is power. OMG, why the hell did they even bother with this? Power production is a good idea to think about, but as every Jurassic Park fan knows, the islands are powered by geothermal energy. With the sheer number of power plants that your islands need, you'd think you were burning coal. These ugly buildings end up all over the islands in campaign, along with the pylons, because I suppose the idea of burying power lines under the ground isn't a good idea when you're on islands that have a history of tornadoes. It's just a system that was not needed, at least not in this format. It doesn't add anything to gameplay or to management, it just adds yet another annoyance, something else to grind, something else to click your rangers to go and do. Then we have the hotel building, which, if we ignore the last DLC, is huge, and also one of the most annoying still to place. It also, for a hotel, doesn't offer food, drink, or bathrooms. Sounds like the hotels on these islands are worse than basic student accommodation. It just makes you build more stuff, but it's not more stuff to add to in your park, it's more stuff to fulfill the basic requirements. The monorail is considered by some to be an attraction. You can use it as one, but it is really not meant to be one. It's meant to be for your transport rating, because the guests in your park refuse to walk any distance at all. In the film, a monorail made sense considering the scope of the resort. But these small island areas are probably equivalent to me walking down the road to my mum's house about 45 minutes away. Most big theme parks in the UK seem to be as large as the island spaces on Matanceros, for example. But guests can't be bothered to walk a short distance? The monorail also can't cross itself, you can't have points on it, and that just means you can have no variation in how the monorail works or monorail routes. Scale and size are also totally balked when it comes to the buildings in this game. Some of these structures are larger than they need to be. The viewing gallery, for example, is a massive 2-story tall structure that looks at least as high as a 3-story building, and yet inside it's mostly empty and has maybe half a dozen guests in it at any one time. Building hitboxes are equally as frustrating. This also affects the very few decorative trees we ended up with. Tree 5 is almost totally useless, since you can't put it down anywhere near anything else. Or let's take something as simple as paths. They come in 3 types, but all they are is really a colour swap. They are also always flat. You can't build up with them, you can't build down below ground level with them. You can't make bridges over water or gullies. You can't bury them to make tunnels. Now sure, Jurassic Park Operation Genesis didn't have that either, but there are many games that did, and many that still do. Even something as simple as allowing us to have a bridge would have added a lot to creativity. All these little bits add to making the whole purpose of the game, building your dream dinosaur park, irritating and dull. And the campaign mode demands you do this 5 times as standard, without even considering the DLCs, or the challenge mode. But we'll get to that steaming pile of later. But let's get to that campaign mode. Campaign mode is the main game mode for Jurassic World Evolution. Spread across the Las Cinco Muertes island chain, your mission is... well, that's just the thing. We don't have one. Sure, you have to build a park on each island, but the campaign makes each island feel socially distanced from the others, like your other parks on other islands don't exist. This doesn't really help the feeling that we're doing the same thing over and over again. There's no woven story or idea. Even something as simple as Finch saying, "We want you to construct a brand new Jurassic World resort over all 5 islands," would have done it. Each island comes with its own size of area, and are different but in very bland ways. Tacaño or Sauna are probably the nicest to build on in terms of area of space. Pena is very frustrating, while Muerta has nice beaches and a nice ocean that we can do nothing with. Matanceros is okay, but has a huge hump in the middle that you can do nothing with either. They all have, however, the same basic structure. We have no rivers or different biomes. Then you do the same things over and over again. The biggest annoyance when playing campaign is, by far, however, the almost mobile game clickathon sessions you have. Every few minutes, you have to click on your rangers and then go medicate your dinosaurs, or refill a feeder, or repair a fence, or turn a power plant back on, or get rid of a dead body. That's literally it. Sure, you could do it all yourself, driving the Jeep about, but it's no faster and no funner. Click here, click there, a few clicks everywhere. This was even worse before we got extra large feeders, or could have time limits on when the feeders would actually activate. Again, those were good quality of life things we got, but even then, the constant mobile game like click 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 is very tedious. This boredom is spruced up, apparently, by the occasional dinosaur escape. Now then, we know what happens. As Ian Malcolm said, then comes the running and the screaming, people get eaten, or trampled and bowled over like bowling pins. And what happens? Does your park get a visit from lawyers and inspectors? Are you tasked with improving safety and limited time on face closure? Do you get charged massive legal fees? No, none of that, actually. Not at all. What happens is you get a financial penalty of a few thousand quid. Barely a pittance, really, compared with how easily you make money in this game. And a little bit of a rating decrease. That's it. Because you earn so much money, the limited financial hit becomes meaningless. So, 50 guests just got trampled by a stegosaurus that escaped. Oh well, carry on. Compare that to JPOG, where every park guest death cost £10,000. This is in a game where your monthly income could be only a few thousand a month. One minor breakout could bankrupt you. Too many guest fatalities will close your park regardless. But in JWE, you get a metaphorical slap on the wrist and you carry on. No doubt the reason it has to be like this is that dinosaurs break out so easily and so often. A reason for this is the fencing. You can build electric fences, but they don't work like electric fences. All an electric fence adds is basically a reduction in damage. It doesn't actually shock the creature and convince it not to attack the fence anymore, which is the whole point of electric fences. Nor can you do anything much when the dinosaur starts attacking the fence. In JPOG, you could construct security cameras to watch out for rampaging dinosaurs or breakouts. You could install gun turrets to protect guest areas. You can build lore-scent buildings to attract dinosaurs to the scent of meat or the scent of plants. If your dinosaurs escaped, you could use the lethal gene option to put them down, or use lethal rifle rounds. There were options. The ranger chopper could use their dart gun or rifle, but it could also drop lures, rescue guests, and even had this sonic pulse ability which you used to drive dinosaurs away from particular areas. In Jurassic World Evolution, if your hungry carnivore escapes, the most you can do is set your rangers off to go and knock them out with a sleeping dart, which most dinosaurs take a few shots off to work. In Jurassic Park Operation Genesis, you could kill an escaped raptor with one shot to the head, ending the threat immediately. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want the game to become like Call of Duty with dinosaurs, but at least there were options. At least it felt like the word security was something actually considered. But okay, let's assume that this park building game was actually really a management game all along, shall we? Why are the management options so minimal? We don't have to hire new staff beyond putting 5 in each guest building. We don't have to train our staff. We don't decide how much staff get paid. We can't hire specialist staff to improve the park's rating or circumstances. We don't ever have staff quitting because your escaped Stegosaurus crushed their manager. We have no control over how much we charge for entry, allowing us to either bolster our finances or increase guest count. It doesn't matter if every food place on your island sells the same food at the same price. You can't manage your costs to help when things go wrong in any way. Guests are as robotic as the dinosaurs. Actually, let's talk about the guests for a minute. In JPOG, your guests are divided between types. Some want to see herbivores, some want to see carnivores, some want to see that the island looks natural and that your enclosures are realistic. This all meant that you had to manage your park's exhibits and the way your park looked environmentally to ensure the best guest experience. It's pretty simple guest management. In Jurassic World Evolution, the guests are just a particle effect. The sheer number in your park makes no difference really. They don't have any desire to see anything in particular. They might as well be invisible. Think about how much management is required in an actual zoo. Balancing the costs of the animal's food and medical care, staff costs, and even more against the cost of guest experience advertising and such. That's all management, and yet JWE has very little, if any of it. It seems that Frontier believes that park management is all about clicking on a ranger, telling them to go refill a dinosaur feeder, and that's about it. Once more, it has all the depth of a puddle in the Atacama Desert. So what do we have here then really, if we just discuss the gameplay and campaign experience? Well, we have a park building game with limited creativity, repetitive missions, dull boring options, and no real replay value. We have a management game with so little management that you don't actually feel like you're managing anything. A dinosaur game where a lot of the dinosaurs have so few behaviours they could be any other creature. We have a Jurassic World game where the characters seem to ignore any of the events of the film that the game is set canonically after. If we just take the campaign on its own, and take many of these issues on their own, then we would call Jurassic World Evolution a shell, still a half-completed mess of ideas that needed more development. If we take JWE, however, in hand with other park builders, especially those by Frontier, then the comparison becomes even less favourable. Its shocking lack of features and replay value makes the game stand out amongst Frontier's other offerings, but for all the wrong reasons. But hey, maybe sandbox mode and challenge mode can save the game. Join me in the next part to find out.